Hi friends, Allison here with another layout to share for Scrapbook Nerd. This week we were challenged to create layouts with bold titles and lots of journaling, and I decided to do both. So before I got started, I did a little bit of watercoloring on the layout. Before I started recording a video, and I also went to my Cricut and cut the letters X and O. You can see them in the white cardstock there. I traced them onto Pinkfresh, my favorite story pattern papers, and then fussy cut them out. I was originally going to keep the X's and O's white, but after I got looking at it, just felt like it was a little too plain. So I went to the pattern papers and fussy cut them from that. So if you can see a little hand in the bottom left-hand corner, that's my husband. We were hanging out while I was scrapbooking and he was working on something else using my heat tool. It was kind of fun hanging out together. So if you see a knife and a hand kind of popping in and out in the bottom left-hand screen, that's what's going on. So I've got the letters fussy cut now. I do decide later on to add some hand stitching through the letters as a way to adhere them to the page. I do use a little bit of adhesive to tack them in place so they don't move around before I actually get to the stitching. But in the meantime, I'm just going to map my photo on some black and white cardstock from my stash, and then I pulled out some pattern papers from my stash as well, both in the peach and light pink color schemes, so they fit with the pattern papers from Pinkfresh Studio. And then I'm going to mat them underneath the photo as well. At this point I was thinking I was just going to leave them roughly the same size as the photo, which is about 4 by 3 inches, but in the end I decided just to trim off a strip from each of those papers and attach them to the right hand side of the photo. And you'll see that I attached them directly to the photo with some adhesive, but decided later on to pop the photo up with some foam squares, and then I slid those papers underneath just to create a little bit more dimension. So at this point I decided the plain white base was feeling just a little too flat, so I trimmed off 1/4 inch from 2 sides of the white base and adhered that to a peach colored cardstock that I had in my stash as well, just to create a bit of a frame. So here you can see I'm trimming off just little strips. They're like 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch, and I'm going to attach those to the one side of the photo. So the plan is, after I've got everything adhered, what you see right now is generally where everything is going to stay. It was at this point that I decided I was going to hand stitch the X's and O's to that left hand side of the layout. So I'm just popping some adhesive to the tops and bottoms just to keep them in place, and then I'll turn the camera off and go do the hand stitching. My room is in a basement and it's quite dark. It all has also happened to be evening, so I had to go upstairs where there was more light and do the hand stitching then. The process I follow for my hand stitching is I have a paper piercing tool that I was lucky enough to acquire from a friend, and I make my holes with the paper piercing tool. And that's what I use as a guide to add my hand stitching. Here you can see I'm just doing the last little bit of the stitching. Before I add the holes with the paper piercer, I take a straight edge ruler and just mark with a pencil where I want the stitching to go, and then I follow that line with the paper piercing tool. There's a little foam pad that goes along with it so you don't mark up your table or workspace when you're piercing the paper. So now that that's done, I'm going to adhere my layout base to the peach cardstock, layer my photo and little bits of paper onto the layout. Here you see I had a brain lapse and forgot that I had planned on popping the photo up and leaving the little strips of paper not popped up below that, so tore those little bits of paper off, put the foam squares on, popped my photo onto the layout, and eventually got those little strips adhered to the layout base. After I got those adhered, I still had some of the floral ephemera left from Pinkfresh Studio that I decided to pop onto that right hand side of the photo, and I added a little bit more ephemera there too from the die cut pack, I believe it is. You're just gonna see me audition quite a few things from all over the place within the Pinkfresh My Favorite Story collection. Pulled out the things that I thought I might use, put everything back, and then just played around with placement until I was happy with the placement of everything. Once I had achieved that, I went and glued, of course, everything down. In the end, I'm going to stick with the little white die cut circle that I have in my hand right now. I tried it with a few different things layered beneath it and over top it, and just liked it the way it was, with the flower and that little peach tag layered over top of it right there. I think I end up adding a chipboard sticker and some enamel dots in the end to make a little bit of a cluster there, but I'm really happy with how everything turned out with this layout. This layout is actually one of my top favorites, at least of this month. It came together really quickly and was quite easy to do, and absolutely loved the challenge that Scrapbook Nerd had issued to us to create an oversized title and or include journaling. And I believe that challenge is being extended to you as well. So if you're interested in playing along, it would be awesome to see your artwork. Like I said at the beginning of the video, decided to do both, create an oversized title and add journaling. I'm a huge believer in adding journaling, and all of my layouts, or at least most of them, is going to have journaling of some sort in it. On this layout in particular, I decided to pull out one of the stamps from my stash. It's an alpha stamp, and I created my journaling using that. You can see here right now I pulled out my straight edge ruler again, and I'm just marking out pencil lines where I want the journaling to go. I only did a few lines above the photo and then realized later on that I wanted to add a little bit more journaling, so I took the lines that I drew right to the very top of the my oversized title, and then I did the same on the bottom as well. Took the journaling lines right to the very bottom of the X for the journaling. I spared you the pain of watching me do all of the stamping for my journaling. It is time consuming. It looks great, but you'd be here forever and a day, and I didn't want to do that to you, so I'm just showing you a really quick snippet of it, and then I'll continue on off camera and finish my journaling. The Pinkfresh Studio My Favorite Story collection is still in shop at Scrapbook Nerd, and I do believe there are other Pinkfresh Studio products in the shop as well. So if you love Pinkfresh Studio as much as I do, I encourage you to go to the shop and check it out. And I mean, there's all kinds of other great items in store as well. I believe there's a pre-order happening right now for Photoplay's quarantine collection. So if you want to get your hands on that, definitely leave Joy a message or a comment on the Facebook group so that you can add that to your stash as well. So here I've pretty well got everything done on the layout. Of course, I had to add the date. So I'm stamping that with the date stamp from my stash. I had it originally on scrap white cardstock and then realized it blended in too much with the background. So I actually took a little bit more peach pattern paper from my stash and stamped the date on that. I think I used black ink to stamp the date. Trimmed it down into a little tab and adhered it to the right or the left hand side of the photo, and put a little bit more chipboard stickers from the Pinkfresh Studio collection to denote where the date is as well. And last but not least, I added some enamel dots from the collection as well, just to round out the layout and complete it. And with that, this layout is pretty well done. It's really simple, but really sweet. I do have some close-ups at the end of this video, so I invite you to stick around and check those out. But definitely swing by the Scrapbook Nerd shop and see all the great stuff that's in the shop and the things that are happening on the Facebook group as well. You'll find those links in the description box down below. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. I will see you again very soon. Bye.